Okay, so you're thinking about buying a house for the very first time. Well, there's two things you need to make sure you do. The first is surround yourself with a really, really, really good team that's going to prevent you from, number two, making any mistakes. Because the single biggest cost of buying a home are the mistakes you make that you don't realize you're making at the time. And in this video, we're going to talk about the mistakes to avoid when you're buying your first home. But before we get into it, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And don't forget about our race to 25,000 subscribers. Yes, when we hit 25,000 subscribers, we are going to give away $5,000 for somebody to put into their RESP, their RSP, their TFSA, or to pay down their mortgage. I sincerely thank the 14,000 of you who have already subscribed. You're already entered. If you aren't already subscribed, go ahead, click that subscribe button. It's free, it's easy, and it's definitely worth it. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit. Product, penalty, price, in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's discuss the 7 mistakes that you need to avoid when purchasing a home. And obviously in the intro here, I mentioned that there are 2 things you need to do. The first is build a really great team. The second is to avoid mistakes. Let's talk first and foremost about building a really great team to help you buy a home. So you're gonna wanna have a few things lined up. You're gonna wanna have a really great realtor, and you're gonna wanna have a really great mortgage broker. And the key thing about the realtor and the mortgage broker you choose is choosing people that have the ability to tell you when you are going to make a mistake, to tell you and guide you through the minefields of purchasing a home and getting a mortgage and making sure that you don't step on any of those landmines as you're going through it. One of the biggest mistakes we see people make is they choose whatever realtor comes up first. Maybe it's a new guy who works for a team, or maybe it is somebody that, just got their license, and they choose that realtor without really thinking about the fact that the realtor's primary job for a first-time home buyer is to prevent them from doing things that will get them in trouble down the road. So that means being candid about whether or not a property is the right property or the wrong property, or being candid about the things that may be wrong with this really, really great property that you fell in love with, but that has, some other things going not necessarily in its favor, like maybe it's a basement suite, or maybe it backs onto a really busy road, or any other of about a dozen other things. But here's the thing, you need to have that team built around you. You need to have that mortgage broker that will say, don't get that mortgage because it's going to cost you down the road, and so on and so forth. So that's the first thing, build a team. And the way you do that is by going out and you ask for referrals from people who that have used that particular realtor or that particular mortgage broker, and just ask them what their experience was like. By the way, don't go on Facebook and put this on Facebook and say to your 1,500 artificial friends, hey, I want to buy a house. Anybody know a realtor? Because you will get all kinds of recommendations from people that are third party to the people that you really don't know well. Not the way to do it. Find people who have actually purchased a home in the last 3 to 5 years, colleagues, friends, family, and ask them for specific advice and specific recommendations and why they recommend that person before choosing your realtor. Now let's get into, and same thing by the way for a mortgage broker. Now let's get into the 7 mistakes not to make when purchasing a home. So here's the first and foremost one, is not using a real estate agent. And I mean this in a couple different ways. One is, you don't want to go straight to a listing agent and say, hey, I want to see this property, and then buy from that listing agent, because that listing agent has an obligation to the seller to get as much money as possible for the property. You don't want to go into a new home builder and say, by yourself without representation, and say, hey, sell me a house, because obviously the salesperson has an obligation to the builder, and that's to get as much money as possible for the property. And you definitely don't want to go and find somebody who's selling for sale by owner and purchase directly from them, because in most cases, if they've bought or sold homes in the past, they will have a significant advantage over you. So if you're a first-time home buyer, your realtor is very much the person who is there to save your butt and make sure that you don't get yourself in trouble. You should always use them no matter what. And here's the key piece to number 1, is make sure that they are representing you, that they've got an obligation to represent you and you alone. Make sure they aren't acting for you and the seller or you and the builder. You want somebody whose job it is to represent you and take care of your best interests and your needs, and do those things like tell you when it's a bad idea to buy a basement suite or buy a property that backs onto a busy highway, or any other of potential problems that could come up. Now, the second mistake you don't want to make is not getting pre-approved prior to going out and looking at houses, because One, if you're not pre-approved, you're probably going to write an offer, waste a whole bunch of people's time, and not find that, and not actually be able to buy that house you fell in love with. But you may go out there and you may be thinking, hey, I've downloaded this app, or I've gotten, these quick numbers off the internet, and I should be able to qualify for 350,000, but you only qualify for 300,000. And therefore you go out, you look, and you find places that you absolutely love. And then lo and behold, you aren't able to actually purchase them because you didn't actually have a pre-approval. So the simplest way to alleviate your stress in the home buying process is to make sure that you actually qualify for the properties that you're looking at purchasing. Third mistake we're seeing people make, and this obviously I have some bias here, but let's call a spade a spade. It's 2021, and it just doesn't make sense anymore to go directly to your bank to get a mortgage. If you can go somewhere where there are a whole host of options with respect to different types of lenders, lower penalty lenders, better rate lenders, and you can get somebody to hand select a mortgage for you that is perfectly suited for your personal situation, doesn't that make sense, more sense than just going straight into your bank and taking their word for the fact that they have the right mortgage for you? And here's our experience. Quite often, the bank that you grow up banking with isn't going to end up being the bank that is the right fit for you when it comes to getting a mortgage, because every bank does certain things well and certain things not so well. For example, Scotiabank does mortgages exceptionally well. And that's where we go personally for our mortgages, or we'll go to First National, or we'll go to MCAP, because MCAP and First National are companies that don't have big brands. They don't have huge budgets for marketing. They can't skate on their brand. So obviously they have to have better products than their big bank competitors. Otherwise they wouldn't exist. Nobody would go there. So, we always look to the banks that we're looking for specific types of products to make sure that they actually do that type of product really well. Our commercial banking is with RBC. RBC does commercial banking really well. Would we ever get a mortgage with them? No, absolutely not, because their mortgages aren't as good as most of the other banks or most of the other lenders. We have, and that's of course my opinion, we also don't have bank accounts at Bank of Montreal. We have all of our investments at Bank of Montreal, but we don't get our mortgages through Bank of Montreal because obviously Scotiabank has a better mortgage for us, so we go there. So the key thing here is getting the mortgage that's right for you, and figuring out which one's right for you is as simple as finding a really good mortgage broker who will look at your situation and determine what is the mortgage that actually makes the most sense, not just the one that comes from the bank that you have dealt with since you were 7 or 8 years old. Fourth mistake we see people making is choosing the wrong mortgage. So this happens both with banks and brokers. Now, obviously, I took a position in the last point that banks are not the place to get your mortgage. There's also brokers where I don't believe that they're the right place to get your mortgage either. These are discount type brokers who deal in highly discounted rates and aren't doing that hand selection of a mortgage for you to make sure you get all the products and all the features that you need. They're just looking at it from a rate perspective, and when you get the cheapest option, you most often get what you pay for. So choosing the wrong mortgage is a huge mistake, and things you want to avoid are things like a bona fide sale clause, discount mortgages that have reduced prepayment privileges, and basically mortgages that don't have full features. And keep in mind that if this is your first home, you want to have the mortgage with the most flexibility. By the way, this is also a conversation around fixed versus variable rates. We're a big believer in variable rates because, one, on a $300,000 home, for example, it's going to cost you about $1,500 less per year to have a variable rate mortgage. It's going to cost you less to get out of the mortgage in a penalty, because 5-year fixed mortgages have big penalties. Doesn't matter where you get them. And if you get them from a big bank, they're even bigger. But we want to get mortgages that have reduced penalties down the road. And we want to have lots of flexibility, because quite honestly, if this is your first home, there's a really, really good chance that you're going to be moving somewhere in the next 3 to 10 years to a bigger home. And therefore you want to make sure that you have a mortgage that has the flexibility that allows you to do that while not giving away your negotiating power. And what I mean by giving away your negotiating power is, if you go into a big bank, you get a 5-year fixed mortgage with a big penalty. The minute you go to move to a different property, you've lost your negotiating power because you've got a penalty that prevents you from being able to leave, and therefore the bank gets to dictate the terms. So again, simplest way to make sure that you have the right mortgage and the right features that you need is to go to a broker and make sure that you get a mortgage that is selected based on your needs, not based on the lowest interest rate. Now, number 5 is buying the wrong house. And this one is huge. It is one, especially in this type of market that we're seeing frequently, and that is where you purchase the wrong type of property. So maybe you buy that condo and you buy it in the basement and it becomes really hard to sell. Or maybe you think you're getting a really good deal on a house that backs onto a major roadway. And for you, that's not a big deal, but for potential buyers down the road, it is a big deal. And you buy a property that will be very hard for you to sell down the road. Or maybe you just buy in the wrong community for the wrong amount and it's too big of a house or it's too small of a house. So really understanding what you want and why you want it is important. And the easiest way to do this is to take out a sheet of paper, draw a line down the center, write what you want, and then why you want those things. And then when it comes time to look at houses and buy a house, make sure that you're buying your whys, not your wants, not the whats, but the whys. So if you want to buy a property that is close to downtown, and the reason why is because it is close to work, well, you can probably buy just a little bit outside of downtown because it is still close to work, but maybe not down in that inner core. Or let's say you want to buy on a green space because you want privacy. Well, the why is the privacy, and there's lots of other ways to get privacy in a yard, for example, big trees and those sorts of things. So make sure that you're buying your whys, not your whats, and make sure that your whys align with your partner's whys and that you both understand what your most important whys are and look for a house that meets both of those. Number 6 is buying too much house. We see this so often, ourselves included. We bought way too big of a house for what we needed. We have a small family, my wife, myself, my son, 2 dogs. We did not need the house that we bought. It is far, far, far too big. And we see this all the time. People buy houses, they think they need all this space, and at the end of the day, they don't. And that is one of the biggest trends in the market today is people are buying houses with more space. And what they don't realize that comes along with it is bigger yards, which means more lawn work. Or more yard work. They are buying bigger houses, and that means more cleaning. And they're just buying houses that cost more to heat. They cost more to operate, and they have higher taxes. And that is one thing that we want people to consider going forward is making sure that you aren't buying more house than you absolutely need. And last but not least, our 7th biggest mistake we see people make, and ask some people in Ontario about this or in Toronto about this, who have waited for the market to fall for the last 5 to 10 years and have now essentially priced themselves out of the market. Here's the thing. If you just predict that home prices are going to go up by 4 to 5% a year, which is what they typically go up, and you predict that every single year for the next 25 years, you will outperform the best economists in the country. The reason why is because nobody who makes market predictions can accurately predict the market. If you predict that the market's going to skyrocket or that it's going to go down, you will more than likely be outperformed by somebody who just says, well, I think it's going to go up the same amount that it normally goes up. And where we see people making mistakes is thinking that the market is going to crash, and after a certain amount of time, realizing that it probably isn't going to crash, and therefore getting themselves in a situation where they can no longer afford a home, or where they're buying the same home that they would have previously bought, but paying $100,000 to $150,000 more for it. That's where people who were waiting in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 for the market to correct, that's where they now find themselves in a place where they're paying significantly more for a house because they incorrectly predicted and incorrectly tried to time the market. So those are the 7 big mistakes people make. By the way, all of this leads into our first-time homebuyers course or our homebuyer boot camp that we have created. It is priced so affordably that anybody can take that course and foreseeably get 10 to 50 times their money back. In fact, we've put a specific offer in that course for each and every person who takes it if they choose to get the mortgage eventually through Mortgage 360 to get at least 10 times their money back. We cover things like how to buy your first home, how to choose a realtor, all the things that come along with buying a house, what you can negotiate into a mortgage, what you can't, and so on and so forth. It is the full start to finish from beginning to end, from down payment to closing on how to buy a home in Canada. And like I said, it is priced so affordably that anybody who takes that course will 100% get the value out of it. I sincerely hope that if you are looking to purchase a home in Canada in the next 6 months to 18 months, that you will join us on that course and make sure that you know everything you need to know about purchasing a home so you don't make the mistakes that we've outlined in this video, and so that you know exactly what you need to do from start to finish when it comes time to buy that house. So if you found this video useful, do me that favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video, and don't forget about our race to 25,000 subscribers. I sincerely hope you're the winner, but the only way you'll win is if you click that subscribe button. We'll see you on the next video. Cheers.